You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello, this is Paul Stefan, and we're here tonight to talk with another Maryland filmmaker. And we're happy to have with us tonight Chester Stacey, production designer. Hello, Chester.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having me. Oh, I'm great.
And we'll just briefly go over and say, hey, we know you're a local guy, right? You're from around.
Yeah, Canton. Not far from here at all.
Oh, that's good. And your studio is also near there.
Yeah, I can bike to my studio. It's in Highlandtown. It's actually it used to be an old meat smoking factory, cool. So it's a neat space.
That sounds pretty cool.
You come check it out sometime.
We definitely will. And the thing we want to know too is a little bit about how it all began for you. You know, where you got your artistic inclination, how you started, and I didn't even get far enough to say, did you go to high school and college for design? But we'll get into that too. But talk about how it all started for you.
So I'll go back to kindergarten and I'll reference the Christmas Bazaar poster contest that I entered and won. And
good.
My poster was the advertising poster for the bazaar that year of our elementary school. And that included everyone from kindergarten to 5th grade.
Wow.
So it was actually, my head got kind of big, kind of quick. But along the line, I always was drawn to art. I would draw in my free time. I certainly loved creative expression. It was supported by my parents, and I eventually learned somewhere along 5th to 8th grade, somewhere in there, I knew graphic design was it was called commercial artist then.
Oh yeah.
I was going to date myself a little bit. It's called a commercial artist, but it's now a graphic designer, same thing. But I was like, yeah, that's really cool. I would love to design logos, or I would love to design, the forms that we look at and see, every day.
Right.
And
to bring that in a little bit is to say that I collect graphics. That's one of my collections.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of to me the great, what I call and I used to call them, I use this term anymore, American illustrators.
Absolutely.
They did magazine covers. Look at Norman Rockwell.
The Evening
this guy,
Post, yeah.
Edward Penfield, who I really like. Maxfield Parrish. These kind of guys that were commercial artists.
Illustrators,
and
absolutely.
Illustrators they were called.
Beautiful.
And of course now it's graphic arts.
Yeah, and that art is, I know a gentleman, Art Landerman in Columbia, who's still a genuine illustrator that you can hire to completely conceptualize and draw something that does not exist, that you can't take a photo of, basically. Anymore, though, the computer has replaced a lot of those illustrators, because what those illustrators were usually doing was creating the most idyllic version of an image. The Norman Rockwell image on the covers of the Saturday Evening Post, like you mentioned, were the most glorified image of whatever that subject was. Mm-hmm. The rosy-cheeked individuals, the whatever, was quite, idyllic. And now you can do that in Photoshop. I can take a photo of the kid that's actually crying and sort of make them look happy. I mean, it might not be perfect, but you know what I mean. There's a lot of that tool has shifted into.
It's a whole different skill set.
It is.
Because if somebody can just create it from their mind with maybe, a pen, an art pen and something, and create it.
And it is. Now I will say this: the computer does not replace the artist.
Right.
The ability to draw and visualize is still a key part. The computer is only a tool. It's another type of paintbrush.
Right.
It's just in our tool belt. It's another item there. Right. And I think that a lot of people fear the computer or digital or whatever, thinking it's more than that. But it is just a tool, and completely under our control for us to manipulate and use to our own devices.
Do you feel that what's going on, like you just said with the computer, is an artist better if he or she starts with pencil and paper or pen, and then later does it the computer, or they just jump right to computer? I mean, I'm saying, does the actual physically doing train you in a way that it wouldn't if you just went right to computer?
Paul, that's a great question.
Okay. Let's give a thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know the answer, but I would say
Speculate.
I would certainly say that there is something to the coloring book that we still give to young children.
Right.
although I have seen the iPad version of a coloring book or the tablet version of a coloring book. But that still is a tactile thing. So
Right.
yes, I think the tactile part is still a part of it. Whether I'm dragging the mouse or dragging the pencil or crayon, similar movement is there. So either I think could come first. That's a good question.
Because you did say you were a transitional figure in that you used to use those kind of tools.
Yeah.
And you did the
Oh, yeah.
hands-on stuff.
Oh, I learned graphic design by good old cut and paste with wax, hot wax, and glue, and layers of ruby lith, and you had to create separations for your art, literally your CMYK layers. And then the computer was coming along at the same time. I was learning those tools, and that all was replaced and changed, and certainly a much more efficient way to generate precision art.
Right.
Especially for like advertising and marketing and that type of graphic, which generally didn't have a soft feel, had more of a mechanical or precise feel.
Right. I mean, part of, I think, where it gets a dirty name too these days is with, you mentioned Photoshop, and that people say, I see a photo either online or I see it in a newspaper or magazine, and I bet it's been manipulated, it's not real.
Sure.
That's not the person. There was the whole controversy years ago, or not that many years ago, about them slimming down models.
Oh, sure.
In magazines, and that's not what she really looks like. And
Right. Oh,
people
yeah.
like Amy Schumer fought against it, and other
Sure.
people, and other things too, where you can take. I say with for book covers, for example, or for novels and things. They'll say this picture and that picture and that picture, 3 pictures, and make a composite, and that's the book cover. And
Right.
it makes it look like one picture that was all done. Like they took the sky from here, they took the person from here,
Sure.
they took something else from there, and put it all together.
Sure.
Whereas
Yeah,
before you
creating
had to
something out of
frame it
nothing.
with this, your eye, and all those things had to actually physically be there.
Right.
And that's a change.
It is a big change, and you bring up a good point in that audiences now are more savvy to that as well,
Right.
and it means that we have to hone our craft all the more. We aren't given the grace. They're like, oh, I see your edge of your green screen there, or oh, I see the the visual effects you use there, or what have you.
Right.
Because they know, yeah, okay, I see how you did that, or I can do that too with my phone to a degree, or at least I understand the principle.
Right.
Um,
That's true.
So the accessibility to these tools, I think overall, I would say is a benefit, and probably coming at them the sooner as you can is better, just like any proficiency. But probably at the same time. I think the hand
Right.
with the crayon and the hand with the mouse, we sort of circumvented all the way back around.
There you go. Now, did you go to a special high school for this, or take courses in high school? You didn't go to like an
No.
arts high school or
I didn't.
commercial arts
No,
high
it's public school all the way through high school. We did have a little bit of electable credits, I guess, in my senior year, and I certainly did focus on some art studio time, and I had some like free studio time, things like that. Not until college did I really have a track, and in college it was a fine art major with what they call a specialty graphic design, and I was a theater minor.
Oh, okay.
And I actually spent a lot of time at the theater. I probably spent more than 50% of my time in the theater rather than the art studio. I was dedicating a lot of energy to both, but I certainly was dedicating more energy to the theater, even though it was a minor, and I was falling in love with the microcosm of the theater. The fact that I did a little acting
Okay.
in college, and that was cool and exciting and thrilling. I also worked with the tech and worked behind and learned a lot more craft for theater tech, not only building sets, painting them, designing them, but also lighting them, running the mechanical electrics, the whole ball of wax, literally the microcosm that is the theater. So I think that was something that also was always underlying, so that when I was out in the world in my career as a graphic designer, I ended up working in large format print.
Okay.
Commercial printing, murals, billboards, giant printing, basically. An art director who was working on The Wire came into our shop and introduced herself, had some copies of some plans. The shop I was working in, we also did architectural reproduction, so copies of blueprints and things like that.
Okay.
Everything was large that we did, but that was another particular service. And she had drawings that I recognized immediately as set drawings, and I was like, oh, this is cool, and we chatted a little bit, and then she remembered me, and I worked with her a few more times on a couple different things, producing the political posters for The Wire when Carcetti was running, and they had all the political posters. That was one of the things that our shop actually printed for this particular art director. And I noticed what she did, and I sort of, paid attention, and knew her for 4 or 5 years, and some of that helped me understand what it is to be an art director, and then even higher up the production designer, and making some of those choices about what you actually see on the screen for a TV or film production.
Well, did you then actually work on The Wire besides just doing posters, or?
The only work I did on The Wire was always related to print production, or as a subcontractor, basically providing some sort of unique printed product for The Wire. I later worked on House of Cards. Well, at the end of The Wire, I produced a bunch of canvases, really high-end. They were giclée type canvases, which is a type of reproduction, a very high-quality reproduction of the portraits of the mayor from the Capitol or the town hall in Baltimore, City Hall, and they're life-size portraits of past mayors, and they're quite detailed. And for the set that they had built, they wanted complete replicas, and I helped produce those. And in producing those, it became a very intimate relationship with the set decoration team, the set dressers, the art direction team. I was invited to the set to see how they were being implemented, to make sure the materials I was using were going to work well. I was doing some of the stretching and building the rear frames, the stretcher bar frames, that they were then covering with a more beautiful gilded frame. But still, we had to all work together. So that really triggered my mind. And that was well after college and everything, and I was like, oh, this is a really fascinating gig, to be involved with creating the space that people will see for a particular moment. And the production designer is responsible for absolutely everything that you see, really, except for the actor's body, because under the production design sometimes often is wardrobe or costume design as well. It's really like the head visual artist, and then, or the head visualizer, and then there are brackets beneath that: art director, costume designer, etc.
So I don't think a lot of people are aware of that, because you talked about a little bit about that off camera too, and that's what I want our audience to know about, is that the production designer is really one of the top credits up there, with like the director, the screenwriter, the DP, all those people. You have to work with all of them. And it is, and I think you alluded to, but we'll get you to expand on it, the production designer is a way, his or her job is really to help tell the story.
Not to tell the story. I think to visualize.
Visualize the story. Excuse me,
yes,
that is a better way of putting
it. And I make that distinction because certainly the director is trying to tell the story and use all of our capacities in our microcosm to come together to do the best job to tell that story, using the visual and audio medium of film or television. We'll add smell soon.
Well, there was smell-o-vision once in a John Waters movie.
But in that, the production designer is relied on, and yes, it's usually a top credit. It's usually a front credit. Sometimes on the front splash screen. It's often on the poster. But if you want to really think about what it is, it's one of the hardest working jobs, because you start early in the process. A lot of pre-planning and pre-production.
Yeah, you're in pre-production.
Because you got to essentially visualize and work with your location scouts to have spaces and or modify them if they're going to have any sets built in them or things like that. Of course, obtain all of the materials that you're going to use to do so. It's essentially a mini construction job, as well as a management of inventory, because you're also doing props. Props fall under production design.
Wow, yeah.
And that team. The picture cars fall under literally every item that you see, except for the actors, is under the umbrella of the production designer. Now, the production designer, of course, doesn't touch and see every single one of these items. There's a team. Art director is going to lead more of the visualizations of, some graphics or any signage or particular plot point text that we see in things like that. Of course, your wardrobe or your costume designer is going to work directly with those items using a guidance that the production designer has created. So we usually have a palette that we create.
Do you work with the lighting designers?
So we work with, so lighting is separate.
Separate.
Separate gang.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly the influence of the tone of the space has been talked about at some point, but usually, okay, that's a tough question to answer. A lot of the productions I've worked on have been independent productions, non-union, with somewhat less structure.
Okay.
That being said, absolutely the lighting designer will have at some point worked in pre-production and looked at our spaces, and we will know our color tones that we're looking for.
Right.
In the real world, most of the time, that meeting is happening, he and I, or she and I, on the set the week before we're going to be doing that actual scene. So, reality versus what you would desire planning, a little bit different. But yes, all of us come together to collaborate on that visual. And the director is, of course, the head of all of this, and the director has passed down to myself, hey, I had a thought of this palette, can you refine it and see what we get? And we might select several blues to be our dominant and then use some pops of a certain red, and that will be a signature throughout our production. Or any other pairings of particular colors that we feel work well. And the red is often great. Blue and red are often used in like the slasher type because it makes the blood contrast really well.
Right. Well, I guess to clarify why I talked about, or actually said that the production designer helps tell the story, I think of what your design looks like or what your set looks like. It's like telegraphic to your audience in the sense that it sort of tells part of the story when you're setting the scene. You say, okay,
Sure.
This is this type of room, or let's say, simple example, odd couple that this is the sloppy guy because of the way his apartment looks, or this is the neat guy because of the way his apartment looks like, and you're looking at objects. You're not looking at actors in a space. Maybe even the shot might just open on an empty room, but looking at the set, it's going to tell you a lot of things. There might be a calendar on a wall or books on a bookshelf, things that tell you something about, even gives you maybe background about your character, your lead character.
And even some exposition.
Yeah, an exposition sometimes.
I like your point, Paul. I'll concede to it tells the story, but I like visualize.
I understand that. I'm just saying that's where I went astray. You're the expert. I'm just saying.
I like the idea that what you're saying, though, too. Of course, the best film can do a great deal just with the visual.
Right.
Now, and it can be silent, but there can be actors there, and there can be a very powerful moment.
Of course.
Just in stillness.
Right.
The art of a director that can pull that out, that's the real key.
Right. Now, in the work that you have been doing, because you have given us some distinction of the variance of what's a set director, I guess, and what's a production designer, and a set dresser.
Mm-hmm.
They're all different.
Yeah. So set dresser is more about the moment to moment after we've already decorated and fully designed a space and fully decorated it. It's ready. The director has approved it. Then during takes, the dresser is repairing things or replacing things that have gotten out of continuity. So if the TV gets turned on in the scene and then we rewind, the set dresser literally will go over there and turn it back off, or their team will. So the set dresser is sort of babysitting the set. I'm not trying to belittle this as a huge task. It's incredibly important, and it is the responsibility that you put to a babysitter, because it's like, okay, make sure this child stays exactly as I left this child with you. And it's the same thing. Please make sure this set stays exactly as I left it with you.
Right.
So I would sign off on the space, leave it with the set dressing department while it's being shot, and they are in control of that space and are making sure it stays in that look. That's one distinction of one of those jobs.
Well, that's important because, I like the way you said it was continuity, because in the old days, a lot about old movies, continuity was the script girl. Say,
and it still is a script supervisor is in charge of continuity and works directly with the set dressing team.
They work they work together.
Yes.
Because I know a lot of people, see movies, they say, that they check for the bloopers and say, look, for example, the microphone's here, but it was just over there in the
Yep.
last scene, and it should have stayed there. I mean, sometimes they don't catch everything, and we're talking about major Hollywood productions.
Absolutely.
You know.
Because honestly, there are many, many wheels in motion at any one moment on a set. And, when the camera's rolling or not, as soon as the camera's not rolling, there's almost more activity often of all the people resetting the different elements of an effect or, a prop. I mean, anytime something breaks, I mean, those resets are, the resets are an enormous amount of activity that nobody sees. And then a stillness, we're all calm, we're back into the moment. Then if there's a huge moment, then it's big or whatever it is or under action. But yeah, there's an amazing amount of activity that occurs in the space while nothing is being recorded.
Right. I mean, part of what I was going to say too is there's a difference between what most people see, which are the big Hollywood productions. What are the challenges for a set designer on a low-budget indie?
Well, certainly, of course, you're usually wearing more hats, and yes, I'll have less people on the team. I might have one person that's doing props. I might have one person that's doing set dressing, and then another PA and myself. Maybe one more person. And in that scenario, the big difference. A little bit more responsibility on fewer shoulders. So you get some trip ups and things like that because it's too much of a load for certain individuals, certain times, myself included. I've certainly made mistakes under those kinds of scenarios when you're sort of tackling one more task than you should be at that moment. At the same time, it's thrilling to be in a moment with, for example, an effect going off and a sound cue and a weapon cue and a car and and multiple things like this. And when they all do seamlessly hit and you get it on the third take and everyone loves it, it's pretty darn cool. I certainly am not one though that likes to go. I look at the frame to make sure that it is the image that we all decided we wanted to see and has appropriate framing, and cinematographer and I agree on that, or camera operator, or whatever term you want to use for whoever's lead operator. The other thing I do though is I don't really look at it afterwards. I'm not interested in seeing what we caught or looking at dailies or any of that. I need to see at the beginning, and then all the rest of it, my job is done.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to see the edit. I don't want to be involved with the edit. I don't want to hear about anything until later when I go to the screening or the premiere.
I was going to ask you, because it's a visual medium, as you've made very clear, how closely do you usually work with the DP?
Very closely, certainly. And as a matter of fact, the DP and I will often approach a moment where the director says, "Oh, can we do something different here?" And we will then, right there at that moment, grab some other props, figure out a new angle. The last production I was just working on in November in Kentucky, similar type of thing happened. The DP had a great idea of us coming from behind some large blue glass, some historic blue glass, which put a great color filter across the lens as we tracked behind it and then revealed the actors. And it was a real quick setup. We had some use them, and here's how we can do it. And so, I had them.
Yeah.
We had them in the space. He made a suggestion. I was like, yes, that's a great idea. We also worked with the grip at the moment, adjusted the lighting to then, pop a reflection there, and then, So yes, definitely worked with the production designer really is going to touch every aspect. I've taken the watch pins out of watches for actors to adjust the size during a take, because I often have a lot of tools as well. Because like I said, we do carpentry and welding and electrical and general, not electrical for the lighting, but like literally if we need to do some electrical work on the set, our department will do that. So. A lot of people will group us and call us the art department. All usually include wardrobe. That usually is just props and the set dressing team and set decoration team. But really, we have a lot of stuff. So people come to us for, oh, you guys have tape. Oh, you have glue. Oh, you have markers. Oh, you have fill in the blank. And we do. Screws, nuts, hardware,
There you go.
whatever.
Well, part of it too is I was reading it was amazing. It says a production designer really has a control or at least responsibility for a good piece of a budget on a film.
Absolutely. Because of the prop investment and the material investment. And often if you are in charge of, setting up the transportation directly, the transportation vehicles, not for moving actors around, but for use in picture, certainly you can pick up a quick tally up a quick budget there.
Right.
I've worked with a range of budgets. I've worked with budgets on 8-minute films of $1,500.
Okay.
And I've worked with about $17,000 on a 3-week movie. And this recent one was quite a bit more. I don't actually know what our final budget was on this recent one, but I would put it closer to 40 grand, something like that.
Was that for The Night Watchman?
That was for Starlight,
Oh.
which is a whole nother film.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, part of it too, I was going to say that I think sometimes, when you're talking about budgets, is to say that a production designer has to be a magician, maybe. I'm going to say part of it when you talk about small budgets, say, what are the tricks? How do you make something look more expensive than what it really is?
Oh, sure.
You want to make a set look, boom, this looks like
of
Hollywood, like it's a $100,000 set, and it may be a $10,000 set. How do you get away with that?
So
To have the same look?
So again, there's the collaboration with our DP. Let's make sure we're framing what we definitely want to see and what we don't want to see.
Keeping it out of frame.
Keeping certain things out of frame.
Right.
That's usually somewhat more critical in keeping the magic or the high level quality of it. Something that may either gives away a modern element, especially if you're doing a period piece.
I was going to ask if you were doing have ever done a period piece. But.
Right, so that would be a big telltale right there. Certainly, the framing is key.
Okay.
The perspective and the framing. Knowing the shot list, of course, too, for that day, or for that set, is helpful too. If we're going to really be 360 in it, then you're going to have to invest a little bit more. If we are not going to be looking at all sides, or if we're going to only have certain perspectives, or if we only need certain points of view, or the storytelling moment is big and grand, but is going to be only a twofer or only a few certain frames, then we know we can put our money in where that close-up is going to land.
Okay.
So we'll put our money into a higher finish or a higher detail, level 5 drywall there, use a foil, use literally a higher grade material there, or your feature prop or the piece that you invested the most in, et cetera, et cetera. Again, literally filling that frame precisely where it is. So that's the first part about it, is the framing.
That's the real secret,
Yeah.
I guess. I guess the other part, in recent years, because of the digitalization of filmmaking, that I would say a lot of times you'd be low-budget films always were traditionally more in actual locations or on locations, real buildings as opposed to sets and stuff. And I don't know if indies are still maybe more doing that than studio productions. And to say the challenges of that, I guess, are pretty much the same. You might say, we got to do this. And, well, let's see. Well, you send the guys out looking for a location. Well, we'll find something to fit the script to say this is an old house or whatever we need. Or if not, you can, again, I guess that's the framing. We can find a room. Oh, this looks like it's from 1900 or something.
Yep.
Because I don't know if you keep up with everything that's going on, but one of the things that amazed me, and one of the areas was production design, was this recent series I liked, a mini-series that finished last night, The Alienist, where they were trying to make, it was very much looked like it was supposed to be, which was 1896 New York.
Right.
And a lot of it were real buildings and real locations, obviously, because it's TNT. It's not like, it's not a big budget thing.
Right.
And I mean, it did construct some amazing outdoor sets, but still, I'm just saying that you have to sometimes choose.
Yes. Certainly, indie film predominantly, I would say, uses found or predominantly 90% ready-to-go spaces. If we're doing some manipulation, it's to modify something that's existing. We're trying to do the least new construction, of course, as possible, and use, of course, the least resources in that sense. Very common. Paint something, put a coat of paint on it, just like the realtor says when you're trying to sell your house. I mean, it's the same thing.
Right.
You freshen it up. That's an easy trick. It's very inexpensive.
And I think part of that is like you would learn that from your time in stage work, because in set design on stage, it's the way you might paint your flat or whatever.
Sure.
That would set your mood, and that
Sure.
would then transfer to film if you had that stage background.
Sure. And I still use faux painting directly on a film set all the time too. So we'll have damage occur, or an actor is supposed to damage a door specifically, like they punch it or something, and we want to create a mark that's the same every time. So I've had an actor punch something, and then I have carefully painted that a few other times on
wow.
copies of panels of a door, so we can swap those out, and they're the same thing. But it comes down to that faux painting technique is really helpful there. There's really no other way to copy that really quickly, other than good old, old paint and now unique materials. Sometimes we'll throw some. If there was blood on the actor's hand, like artificial blood, we'll use that in our coloring too, so we get the same kinds of materials and things like that. But yeah, a lot of DIY, a lot of on your feet thinking, a lot of problem solving.
Yeah.
Certainly, I think making a set look grander or more expensive or top of the line or very Hollywood has a lot to do with the framing. Like I said, has a lot to do also though with the care in that original selection. If we've looked at that space and found the right framing and then spent a little bit of time dressing it, it's amazing what you can make happen.
Great. Well, what would be any upcoming productions or projects you're going to be involved with that you can talk about?
Sure. So I also do theatrical design.
Oh.
And I'm currently working on the design for Alice in Wonderland being produced at Chesapeake Shakespeare Company.
Wow.
On Calvert Street.
Of course, I know exactly where it is.
Yeah.
The old Richardsonian Romanesque former bank. The
Yeah.
Red brick.
Yeah, the Mercantile Trust. It's a double. That actually, the structure is quite unique.
Yeah.
You talk about spaces. That's a double wall building.
Yeah.
So, yes, I'll be
So you're doing that
designing
production.
Alice in Wonderland for them. And we have I've sent in the preliminary sketches. We have an organic theme, so it's very like large scale flowers and moss and
Interesting.
toadstools and
Wow.
sort of like you're the size of an insect in a garden.
Oh, so not quite Tim Burton-ish, but sort of.
Yeah, it's in that vein. It's in A Bug's Life or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It's
Yeah,
kind of
that
that
kind of thing. Wow,
idea. There's a
interesting,
couple of ideas going on.
And you have any other things that you're
Yeah,
involved
I'm
with
also
right
working on concurrently an outdoor art installation for the
Oh.
Columbia Mall.
now? Okay, great.
And it strangely has a similar theme. It's it's an outdoor installation in their food court. And it is designed to look like there are these triangular banners that are overhead, designed to look like you're walking under blades of grass. So again, like you're an insect size.
Wow.
So both of these ideas happened literally at the same time, and I do this all the time. I borrowed from my own idea. I'm working on another project, and I was like, this is kind of a cool idea. I'm going to use it for both. So
That's
both
good.
of these projects are using the same sort of idea
Interesting.
of scale, looking up at large flora and grass.
Terrific. Terrific. I'll just say, well, this is fascinating. Of course, like we always say to everybody that we like who's come here, we want you to come back. And even, like I said, we can film at your studio and you can show us around where some of the magic happens. It's sort of your dream,
Oh, I'd love
your
to.
dream factory.
Oh, I'd love
that
to,
we'll
Paul.
go to. So now tell us, please, in that camera over there, what your contact information is, where people can find Chester Stacey.
Sure. My name is Chester Stacey. I own Chester Creates, LLC, and I am a production designer and theater designer, and I also like to call myself a design engineer. My contact information is chester.stacey@gmail.com, and you can also find me on Facebook. I have a web page for my company, Chester Creates.
Great. Well, thanks for stopping in our humble little studio tonight. It was great having you.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay. And well, folks, there we go. I always hate to end it, but this is the end of another Paul Stefan show. And tune in next time for another fascinating guest. Good night.
You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.